Hello, today is June 15th, 2021. My name is Leslie Torres. I am interviewing Moises Robledo for the University Library Special Collections and Archives at the University of Texas Rio Grande Valley, hereafter abbreviated as UTRGV. This project is in partnership with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin. Please know, Mr. Robledo, that this interview will be placed in the University Library Special Collections and Archives at UTRGV and shared with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin. If there is anything you do not wish to answer or talk about, I will honor your wishes. Also, if there is something you want to talk about, please bring it up and we'll talk about it. The University Library Special Collections and Archives will archive your interview along with any other photographs and other documentation you are willing to share. UTRGV University Library will retain copyright or non-exclusive right to the interview and any other materials you donate to the Special Collections and Archives at UTRGV. So, because we are not conducting this interview in person, I need to record you consenting to make sure you agree with our interview procedures before we continue. So, I'll ask you a series of 6 questions. Please say yes, I agree, or no, I do not agree after each question. Number 1. Do you give University Library Special Collections and Archives at UTRGV consent to archive your interview and your materials at the UTRGV University Library?
I do.
Do you grant UTRGV University Library Special Collections and Archives right, title, and interest and copyright over the interview and any materials you provide?
I do.
Do you agree to allow UTRGV University Library Special Collections and Archives to post this interview on the internet where it may be viewed by people around the world?
Yes.
Do you grant the University Library Special Collections and Archives consent to share your Zoom interview with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin for inclusion in the Voices of a Pandemic Oral History mini project, which will include posting the interview on the internet?
Yes.
Okay, so as you recall, we previously filled out a pre-interview form. We used information from the pre-interview form to help in research. The entire form is kept in a secure Voces server at the University of Texas at Austin. Before Voces sent it to UTRGV University Library Special Collections and Archives, you would have stripped out any contact information for yourself or family members, so that will not be part of your public file. Your public file will only be accessible at UTRGV University Library. The final 2 questions ask for your consent on what I just described. So, do you wish for us to share the rest of your interview in your public file available to researchers at UTRGV University Library Special Collections and Archives?
Yes.
Okay. And on occasion, UTRGV Special Collections and Archives and Voces receive requests from journalists who wish to contact our interview subjects. We only deal with legitimate news outlets. Do you give consent for us to share your phone numbers or your email with journalists?
Yes.
Thank you for your consent. Your experiences and stories mean a lot to us at UTRGV Special Collections Archives. I look forward to what you will say in the interview questions I will now ask. So, Moises, thank you for your time. Like I said earlier, your stories and experiences are valuable to us at UTRGV Special Collections and Archives and the Voces Project. Particularly for us at UTRGV Special Collections, we are committed to preserving the stories of Mexican Americans and Latinos from South Texas and the Rio Grande Valley, and those who work closely with these populations during this COVID-19 pandemic. Sorry, I'm talking too fast. So, because you are an essential worker as a sheriff deputy in Hidalgo County, and because you are a son, brother, father, and friend who is knowledgeable of the ways COVID-19 has affected others in his inner circle, I know you have many meaningful stories and experiences to share on how COVID-19 has impacted these roles you carry out in your life. So, before I ask you to share stories about your life in this pandemic, tell us, who is Moises Robledo?
Okay, well, Moises Robledo, first of all, is a 52-year-old resident of the Rio Grande Valley, specifically Edinburgh, Texas. I was born and raised in Edinburgh, Texas. I did attend, I graduated from Edinburgh Bobcat High School here out of Edinburgh, and I attended UT in Austin. I am married, been married for 21 years. My wife is Marta Robledo. We have 3 children. Our oldest is 21, Marcelino Robledo, attending A&M in College Station. Our second oldest is Jose Nieto Robledo. He's 19. He attends UTRGV here in Edinburgh, Texas. Our youngest is Mia Karina Robledo. She is a student at Edinburgh High School here in Edinburgh. I have been attending faithfully Holy Family Church in Edinburgh, where me and my wife are very active. I am a president of pro-life apostolate there. I'm also on the executive board for Valley Interfaith here in the Rio Grande Valley through my church. I am a catechist teacher, been so for many years, a Eucharistic minister. I am a musician. I play for our church choir at Mass. And I'm also, I am a senior deputy at the Hidalgo County Sheriff's Office. I've been there 15 years with the Sheriff's Office here in Hidalgo County, currently assigned to the Crime Prevention Unit, which is an outreach unit. Our responsibilities have to do with educating the public around safety awareness, the law, and any changes in the law. I'm also certified by the state as a crime prevention specialist, which means I can go into any community or business and teach them how to better secure their facility, their property against and protect it against crime. That's pretty much it.
Thank you for sharing. So the first question I want to ask you is, when did you first hear about COVID-19 and how did you learn about it? Like through radio, TV, social media, etc.?
Well, me and my wife, we stay very current on national events and worldwide events, watch the news regularly. So I heard about it when they first had the outbreak in China, in December of 2019.
Okay.
2019, I'm sorry.
And what was your first reaction to the information about COVID-19?
Well, I had heard about COVID viruses before, and so, I was very much aware that it could be a potential, global problem. So I was very concerned.
Okay, and at what point did you realize this pandemic was a serious life-altering event, or do you not think it's serious, and why?
No, actually, I knew it was going to, pretty much cross the ocean to the United States. And once it did in January of 2020, I started taking it really seriously.
And over the last year, what news media, social media, or other sources do you rely on to keep you informed about coronavirus?
All of the above. I listen regularly to local news station, KRGV Channel 5, where I get most of my news. I do also like to listen to one of the national networks, MSNBC, which I've come to trust a lot. I read the local newspaper, the Monitor. I even listen to a conservative radio talk show, 7:10 a.m., because they do regularly talk about current events. And then social media. I'm always on. Part of my job at the Hidalgo County Sheriff's Office is maintaining their social media websites, social media sites, and so I pay attention a lot to news and information that is shared on that.
Okay, and can you share with me what you understand about COVID-19 as an infectious disease and any of its variants? And likewise, can you share with me what you don't understand about this new coronavirus?
Well, it's a virus, so it lives and acts like a virus. Unlike a bacteria or any other type of ailment, it can be transmitted, by touch, by air, depending on what surface it may be on. The life expectancy of the virus varies. I understand that with all viruses, cleanliness, is the best defense. And I think just like everybody else right now, the biggest question on my mind is, where and when this virus actually started. That's the only thing I guess I would like to understand better.
Okay. And can you tell me what you know about the various vaccines available to the public and how do you feel about these vaccines?
Um, well, like everybody else, we saw I saw the a very large importance put on the development of these vaccines. I know they were created, a lot of people do understand, just like myself, that they were created in, very quickly, tested and developed very quickly. Although I trust them only because I know how much science has advanced, during my lifetime, and I know that this is something that we are very capable of doing, which is because of our technology. So I have a lot of faith in them, uh, and, uh, and I trust the scientists that develop these vaccines.
Okay. And do you have a vaccination story you would like to share with me now or perhaps later in this interview?
I have a lot of vaccination stories, most of them not good. Uh, Mainly because I think the most disappointing aspect of this whole pandemic has been, you know, the how disappointing the rollout of these vaccines has been, especially here in the valley, especially in Hidalgo County. Uh, it the time the time it took to get organized and effectively disperse those vaccines were less than than good, and it was just very sad to see.
Okay. And do your family members hold the same beliefs as you about COVID-19, or are there some who take it more seriously or more lightly?
Um, no, I think we're pretty much at the same level, only because we communicate very well. My family communicates very well with regards to current events, and and through that sharing, we've pretty much come to a commonality regarding the understanding of the virus and the vaccine.
Okay, so for this next set of questions, I'd like to talk about how you've seen COVID-19 affect family members, friends, and yourself. So, first, what was your immediate family's reaction to COVID?
Very serious. We took it very serious. Like I said, I mean, we have several family members that are in the medical field. I myself, I'm a sheriff deputy, and plus I had already a working knowledge of viruses and COVID viruses, especially. And so we all took it very seriously from the get-go, um, pretty much.
And did you follow the stay-at-home order of last March and April of 2020? Why or why not?
Yes, I did. I was considered essential worker, so I didn't have to stay at home, even though I preferred it. But because of my duties to the public, I had to go to work every day and carry out my duties. But I always communicated with the public, with my family and friends, the importance of staying at home, especially because early on there was no access to vaccines, and the knowledge regarding the dangers of this virus was minimal, and you know, especially how it was transmitted person to person.
And did you continue to limit outside contact once the stay-at-home order was lifted?
Yes, and I continue to do that as well, especially because not everyone is vaccinated. I know this very well because of my job, and especially children under 12 aren't vaccinated, and because of my job, I still uh, could contract the virus uh, through my work. and I would hate to pass it on to friends or family.
Okay. And what precautionary changes did your family make to reduce possibilities of becoming infected with COVID-19? Did you perhaps do curbside ordering or wear PPE? PPE?
Uh, we adapted quite a few. We, if anything, we pretty much eliminated eating out. Um, we didn't take advantage of the curbside ordering when it came to supermarkets because that meant coming into contact with people, even since it was curbside. So we minimized the time that we were outside and who we made contact with. We didn't make really contact with anybody early on, just immediate family that lived in the household, and and really with no one in the business area. Just with at work. My wife was also considered an essential employee, so she had to work every day. Uh, we and since part of my duties earlier on was helping out uh, the health department, I was actually through my job making contact with people that had contracted COVID. So getting home, I would immediately disrobe my my work clothes would go directly into the wash. I would go into the shower right after work. We frequently disinfected our home using all kinds of disinfectant products on a daily basis, uh, and we wore masks even at home when we were not in our own room.
Okay. And as you mentioned earlier, you do have a son who lives several hours away for college. So did you consider asking him to come home at any point during the pandemic to ensure his safety?
No, no. We didn't really see a need for that. He, if anything, we just tried to communicate the importance of practicing, uh, you know, strict measures, not going out like we were doing at our house, but never really saw the need to bring him home.
Okay. And did you allow him to visit your household during the peak of the pandemic, or did you limit him from visiting as well?
Yes, we limited it from doing that as well. Not so much because we were afraid he would bring it to us, but we didn't want him to be out in the public at all, to travel, making contact at convenience stores, at restaurants, on the road, with people on the road. We didn't want that at all, so we preferred that he didn't travel.
Okay. And in our pre-interview, you mentioned that you have 12 other siblings. So was it difficult to reduce contact with your siblings and their families so significantly?
Very difficult, very difficult. We're a very close family. We get together weekly, if not daily, and all kinds of celebrations you can imagine, birthdays and special occasions. So very difficult, especially because my parents are in their mid 80s, and so we try and stay in daily contact with them. So all of that had to change because of the pandemic.
Okay. And so you mentioned birthdays. So how did the pandemic impact family traditions, customs, and holiday celebrations? For example, did you celebrate birthdays and Christmas differently?
Yes, I because of my access to I guess technology, I got an account early on to be able to video Zoom with family members and friends, and so we didn't stop those traditions, celebrating those traditions. That we just changed how we did it, which was virtually. Uh, we get together daily, so with regards to that, communicating, celebrating birthdays, anniversaries, even holidays. Uh, we did special celebrations virtual.
Okay, so you guys had to get like tech savvy really fast, huh?
Very, yeah, exactly.
Mm, okay, so um, also, did you have a traditional Thanksgiving or you celebrated virtually as well?
Virtually as well.
Okay, and if you, and did you attend any weddings, graduations, or funerals?
Not at the peak of the pandemic. Oldest son, my second son did graduate high school during the beginning of the pandemic. That graduation was done, ceremony was done outside in an open area where they practiced social distancing and everything. So, and then we did have one family member get married in the latter part of 2020, and also that was done with, taking all the precautions, minimizing the people that were invited to that event.
Okay, and how did you or your family find joy while being in lockdown? Did you get any new hobbies, for example?
Um, no, if anything, it limited our hobbies and activities. I think the most enjoyable thing for us was taking advantage of, of the television programs, uh, where before we probably, watched movies and shows minimally. During the pandemic, it was probably our main uh, way of entertaining ourselves. And but a lot of times we did it as a family.
Okay, so now I would like to ask you about the changes you and your family made, or you and your family endured regarding your religious life and activist activities. So, as we discussed in our pre-interview, and as you mentioned today, you and your family has regularly attended your local church for years. So, can you describe how the pandemic may or may not have put a halt on church-related activities and visits?
It definitely put a halt to person-person church activities, meetings, uh, trainings, and presence. But it didn't stop them altogether. Everything was just converted virtually. Me and my wife continued to teach Bible class or catechism virtually, using the same system that the local school districts used. We also, since I had a Zoom account, I also, and as president and board member of some of these organizations, I organized meetings virtually, which was very difficult, especially because a lot of them, for the older members who did not really know how to utilize that technology. Um, and Sunday Mass, as it were, was also something that became a virtual event. Um, so there were those changes in that aspect.
Okay, so so you and your wife taught Bible study through Google Classroom?
Yes,
Okay. And so were confirmations still an activity that was practiced during 2020?
yes. The classes um, pretty much were on schedule virtually. The um, the actual confirmation ceremony for the students did take place in the church. It was because it was in it actually they ended their training in 2021. So by then those rules were a little bit laxed in church, and so we were able to do it in church, minimizing the people that attended and practicing social distancing and all that.
Okay. And what online platforms were the masses and sermons uploaded on?
They were through Facebook, through their Facebook accounts. They were streamed live.
Okay. And have you since attended church since the beginning of the pandemic?
Yes, as a matter of fact, the diocese here locally pretty much has laxed the the restrictions quite a bit. But I think the key thing for us was getting everybody vaccinated in my family. My youngest daughter was 15 at the time, didn't get her vaccines until about a month ago. So once she got both her vaccines, which was, we attended our first mass together as a family about 2 weekends ago, and we'll continue to do so.
Okay. Okay. So can you describe how operations and visitations have changed since pre-pandemic times now that you visited?
Um, it, they're coming back very slowly. Like I said, everybody's still not vaccinated. There's still a large population that's not vaccinated. So we're coming back really slowly, and just because not everybody is that we know is confident of where we currently stand in that. Uh, so it's coming back slowly.
Okay, so as you mentioned earlier, you have leading roles in civic activist groups such as Valley Interfaith and Pro-Life Apostolate. So what changes were made in these organizations to keep members safe?
The same. Initially, everything was put at a halt until we could organize meetings virtually. Our So the only thing that has continued is meetings and trainings. Those are still done virtually. Our actual, actions, like whether they be, community actions or community events, those are still at a halt. Those still have not restarted.
Okay. And how have these organizations continued public outreach methods, or did they more or less come to a halt because of the pandemic?
No, luckily for us, when it comes to these organizations, a lot of what's done is done through the internet. When it comes to communicating with public officials and civic organizations, so they were able to continue through the internet virtually, uh, and 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 continue business as usual for the most part.
Okay, so thank you for sharing with that section. This next set of questions focuses on your stories and experiences as a Hidalgo County Senior Sheriff's Deputy. So firstly, you mentioned it earlier, but can you remind us what your rank is and the role you perform for the county, and the responsibilities you maintain?
Sure. I'm currently a senior deputy with Hidalgo County Sheriff's Office. I've been with them 15 years. Currently assigned to the Crime Prevention Unit, which is mainly community outreach. Our unit is responsible for the education of the community around safety awareness, around the law, around their rights, around how they can utilize the law to protect themselves and their property from crime. So it's a lot of community presentations, business presentations, public presentations.
So when did your workplace begin introducing changes to daily activities in response to the rise of COVID-19 cases in the Valley?
They began in March of 2020. The count that's when Hidalgo County pretty much started putting restrictions, and the sheriff's office pretty much followed suit, um, requiring, and masks are still required at the workplace. They educated people right away on all PPE procedures to minimize contamination and the practice of social distancing. Um, so it all started pretty close to when the outbreak began here in the United States.
Okay, and how did your duties change as COVID-19 became imminent?
Well, like I said, my unit is mainly responsible for public events and public presentations. So those came to a complete halt. Um, you know, we did continue to do some, but only those that could accommodate us virtually. if otherwise they didn't happen at all. Um, and the sheriff pretty much, for the most part, regarding my specific unit and the duties, they pretty much he pretty much stopped them completely. He didn't restart those or until earlier this year, so almost for a whole year. The only thing that didn't change for me, since I am primarily the one in charge of social media for my department, that was business as usual. If anything, there was an increased volume of work output socially because of the pandemic.
Okay. And sorry, I'm going through my questions. You answered some earlier, but okay. So in a pre-interview, you shared with me that you later found out you had antibodies from the virus and likely became infected from your job. So can you describe whether you had any symptoms or anything to tip you off when you were infected?
No, I did not. Had no symptoms at all that I can remember. I did not realize I had the virus. I found out, I guess, by accident after a regular doctor's visit because of my age. I do those quarterly. And one of the things they do is they take blood, especially because of the pandemic. They do check for the virus, and they're the ones that told me that I had already had the virus and that I currently have the antibodies for the virus, as well as the antibodies for the vaccine, because through my work, being an essential worker, I was given access to the vaccine early on.
Okay. And at that note, can you explain how the vaccination process worked with the county and essential workers?
Well, as everyone knows, the first rollout of the vaccines here in the United States, priority was given to essential workers, which included law enforcement. So the agency that I work for did get some of the first batches of vaccine, and I want to say that they did a really good job of giving those out to our employees.
Okay. And to your knowledge, did the sheriff's department lose any officers to COVID-19? And if so, can you explain how your workplace shifted or reacted in response?
Well, like anybody else, the virus affected county employees. If anything, probably more than anybody else because we were considered essential workers. Our work duties didn't stop. Our work in the community continued, and so I think more than other businesses or agency or organizations, we probably contracted the virus more than other people did.
Okay, so were you a part of enforcing the stay-at-home order of last year? And if so, what was that like?
Yes, very much so. As I mentioned earlier, our department assisted the health department in issuing out the stay-at-home orders that came from the judge. Once someone tested positive, a judge would issue a stay-at-home order, and our department helped in distributing those door to door. So so we were pretty much right in the middle of enforcing that. Plus, uh, because I am in law enforcement, we had our county specifically had several uh, um, curfews put out, for the safety of the public, and our job was to enforce those as well.
So now that the state has lifted mask mandates and relaxed social distancing mandates, what is the role of the county in keeping the population safe and COVID-19 infection rates down? So have any enforcement or safety methods changed or also become more relaxed since last year?
Yes, right now they're pretty much non-existent as far as enforcing any type of restrictions. Since the governor has opened it up, we follow the laws of the state of Texas, so we have to allow for that as well.
And would you like to share your opinion on that?
Well, I mean, like I said earlier, there's still a lot that we, and more importantly myself, do not understand about COVID-19. And me personally, I think until you have a full awareness uh, of any type of virus, you have to take as much precaution as possible. So, me personally, like I think I stated this earlier, we're still practicing, and my family's still practicing, you know, uh, measures to prevent from getting contaminated or getting infected, rather. And so, and that includes minimizing, being at public events, being in large crowds, and especially minimizing contact with youth under 12 years old.
Okay, so now to close, I'll ask you some final questions. So first, are you satisfied with the local response to COVID-19 in Edinburgh and Hidalgo County?
No, since I was in the front lines with regards to how that happened, I saw how outdated uh, their practices were for responding to these type of situations, which I really don't understand, because there is a history of pandemics in our nation. TB, measles, mumps, chicken pox. More recently, maybe might even consider like HIV. And so for me, I think there should have already existed a lot of procedures and practices uh, uh, to respond to these types of situations. I know for a fact that here in the Valley, and more so here in Hidalgo County, uh, we deal with populations that don't exist anywhere else. We have a very high population of undocumented people, and a high population of northerners that travel every year from up north. And none of those things were taken into account when we started, when the local entity started uh, um, these vaccine rollouts. And so even now, uh, I think the numbers that are being reported are very inaccurate, because they don't account for those types of populations that exist here in the county.
Okay, and are you satisfied with the state response to COVID-19 led by Texas and Governor Greg Abbott?
Definitely not. That's pretty much uh, where the problem is initiated with regards to the response. Um, everything's the response started too late in Texas, and it started too little, uh, which I think resulted in a lot more infections and a lot more deaths that didn't have to happen, didn't have to occur. And I blame the governor for that, and his attitude, his overall attitude uh, towards the COVID-19 and the pandemic.
Okay, and were you satisfied with the national response to COVID-19 in 2020, led by former President Donald Trump?
Definitely not. Um, there was nationally, I believe there was a huge denial of what was happening. There was a contempt for the information that was being put out in our nation, and a complete uh, um, disregard for that intelligence, which early on especially affected us negatively in a bad way, and resulted in a very quick spread of the virus and a very slow uh, uh, development in the vaccine process early on, and ultimately has affects us even now, uh, because the virus was allowed to develop as much as it did in the United States.
Okay. And are you satisfied with the current national response to COVID-19 led by President Joe Biden and his administration?
I would say more so now than before. I think um, I would say yes.
Okay. And if you had the power to respond with COVID-19 with policies, laws, or workplace decisions, what would you do differently, if anything?
Uh, the thing I think I would do differently is, giving more power to the local entities. You know, every area of this nation is different when it comes to climate, when it comes to population, uh, when it comes to types of communities. And so when it comes to responding to any type of emergency or 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 this type of situation, the response is different area to area. And so I think more power should be given to the local entities like the county judges with regards to how they respond, instead of on a state or national level, who a lot of times don't understand the local impacts of these things and how they can be different from where they are.
Okay. And last question for today. Are there any other stories or experiences you would like to share with me that I have not asked about?
I think you did a very good job. Thank you.
Okay. Well, then that concludes our interview. Thank you so much for participating in this.
Well, thank you for allowing me to be part of this. I really appreciate it.